so much about their history necessarily, but the sorts of things they're used for. Now, for those of you who are not used to seeing steam vehicles, you're going to go, what is this strange beastie? It's quite simply a steam lorry. Long before diesel and petrol-powered vehicles, lorries, they were steam. There were hundreds, thousands of these things built. You see very few of them these days. They've all disappeared and been scrapped over the years. But this was the form of transport in the early part of the last century. It seems almost remarkable to be saying that, but it was steam-powered and there were steam lorries. And whether it was a theatrical touring company or a collier, or used by the military, or industrial purposes, or agricultural purposes, or deliveries on the major routes around the country, it was steam haulage that was the order of the day. This is dated 1929. It's a Super Sentinel steam lorry, and special mention today because it's owned by Malcolm Rogers from Edenbridge in Kent, and it's his birthday today, all over the world. Dated from 1932, Fowler DNA steamroller, originally worked at a lime works, and was also then sold off to an estate. And one of its early duties was rolling the racetrack for Donington Race Park circuit. So when they now do the superbikes and so on, the original track was laid out using this steamroller. 1932, Fowler DNA steamroller. This is owned by Kev Mills and Sons from Moorcote in Rutland. Nice big old beastie, originally built by Fowlers and Co. from Leeds. Just creeping along the lower, and on a farm it would have been used as a tractor. There we are, there's that term again, because it was a tracted effort for hauling loads around the farm, hay carts and grain carts and that sort of thing, and for hauling farm implements and so on. But it was also used for what's called threshing. And how on earth did that happen? Well, a threshing box is the early form of a combine harvester. We see the combine harvesters now, and the third in the type combine. It combines all the different elements of threshing. It cuts and it separates the corn from the rest of the plant, and chucks out the chaff and puts all the seeds into a different hopper, and it goes along under its own feet. That's the modern combine harvester. Well, once upon a time, harvesting, when first mechanised, was done stationary with a vehicle such as this. How did that work? Well, you'll see up on the left-hand side of the boiler barrel, there is a flywheel spinning around. When the vehicle is stationary, they can engage, the driver can engage the engine so that only the flywheel goes round. You can put a drive belt from the flywheel over to a farm implement such as a threshing box, as they were called, or it could have been a saw bench or a stone crusher or an electrical generator, water pump, and using a drive belt from the flywheel they could drive a threshing box. It's fascinating to see it. You still see some demonstrations of these sometimes. It's absolutely fascinating. So just going along the top side arena, 1930 Ruston Hornsey agricultural traction engine, owned by Fraser and Jess Cruikshank from Rutland. It was still manufacturing, I believe, until about 10 or 15 years ago, before the company was taken over and that name has pretty much disappeared. But originally they made steam vehicles such as this. It's a C-type wagon, and on this occasion has a tanker body fitted, displaying New Forest cider, but could equally have been fuel or gas or chemicals or water or whatever. 1929 Foden C-type, owned by Joe W. from Popham in Hampshire. Now just coming along the lower side arena is a vehicle that looks, to all intents and purposes, like an original old vehicle, but actually this is a rebuild or a replica, only finished 20 years ago. Now you're going to see some smaller replicas a little bit later on, but sometimes people thought, no, let's do the full-size job. And this was finished in 2005. It's sort of been used on farms or industrial settings or collieries or dockyards and so on for hauling loads around on trailers behind. It was built from an original set of Foster drawings and designed for night haulage. And a vehicle that size might have been used by market gardeners around London or elsewhere in the country. Now owned by Peter Jenkins from Hurstfield Point in Sussex. Sort of vehicle again would have been used on road making duties. Sometimes these were owned by county councils, because of course they did, and in a lot of cases still do, have responsibilities for highways and byways in their authority areas. Might have been used for longer roadways used by the government. But almost often was used by building contractors or by other firms of contractors who would hire them out to builders and construction companies when roads needed construction. Dates from 1926, just going round to the topside arena, the Marshall 10-ton S-type roller, owned by Darren Schaefer from Torrington in West Sussex. Used around Britain and exported all over the world, and you can still find steam vehicles, whether they're road vehicles such as this or railway steam locomotives built in Britain, still all over the world, as far afield as Australia, South Africa, Chile, Argentina, New Zealand and so on. They went everywhere because Britain were supreme at building steam vehicles, which is why there were so many companies. The 6-inch of the half-size sail model from ships as they were unloading. It could have been used on early airfields, might have been used by the army for munitions haulage, or it could have been used for agricultural purposes, as I said before, stationary, with the flywheel engaged, spinning round with a drive belt, driving a threshing box or an electrical generator, stone crusher, saw bench or similar. 14 ton. Known as the Earl of Eldon, it's a Garrett thatched engine, dated from 1910, originally used on the Aincombe estate at Cork Castle in Dorset, and was used there for 37 years on a whole variety of different duties. Came to London just after the Second World War and was purchased, luckily, for preservation shortly after. Now owned by Dave Loader from Bournemouth in Dorset. Building and construction companies for building roads and pavements and whatnot. Went to a building company in South Devon, sold into preservation in the early 70s, now owned by Jed Jackson from Cecil here on the Isle of Wight. In 1928, Wallace Stevens advanced 6-ton roller owned by Jed Jackson from Cecil over at West Wight. The launching part, so to speak, I mean, central steam vehicles, the front part, the pad, the engine, the boiler, firebox and so on, the gearing, and the chassis were built as standard, and then different bodies were fitted. So we've seen one with a tanker body, this one has but the people carrier type body actually, but could have easily been a tipper or just a haulage body. So it's a C-type 3-way tipper, and was originally used at a flint quarry in the 1930s and was then purchased for market, garden and nursery use into the 1980s. This one is 1923, even imported 12-ton roller, and this is owned by Andy Barrett from Wootton here on the island. Here these are coming around, turning in front of the commentary position. The steamroller just making its way up to the top side of the arena, the 12-ton roller. Coming along the lower side arena, we go back to 1903. With the exception of the railway locomotives, or one of the railway locomotives operational today, Cowbourne, which dates from 1891, which is on the railway service today. I've got a feeling that this is possibly the oldest steam vehicle yet. A general purpose engine, which once again meant it was used for haulage work, or could be used stationary for driving a piece of equipment, industrial equipment or farm equipment. This particular vehicle was largely used on agricultural use and worked on threshing. So again would have been stationary with the flywheel engaged, drive belt, and the drive belt hooked up to a threshing box. And that was largely in the Berkshire area. It ended up actually working in a scrapyard, not because it was being scrapped, but it was helping to break up bits of equipment and hauling stuff around the scrapyard, and did actually survive itself. And it's now in the ownership of Gemma Hurst from Southampton, 1903, Wallace and Stevens, general purpose 7 horsepower engine. Full-size model, scaled right down using original drawings, and everything is as scaled down as it can be, pretty much with the exception of the driver's seating position. The driver can't sit there or stand there on the footplate. They've got specially constructed trailer and seating arrangements, but everything else is as a full-size vehicle. This was completed just over 30 years ago. It was owned by Graham Capper from Storrington in West Sussex. Major builders of traction engines, but they built a fair few, and again a name you just don't know of these days. It's the B2 Little Giant. It was originally used by a contracting company near Tunbridge Wells in Kent. By contracting company, I mean it was used by them and hired out for haulage work. Same as anything these days. You know, you can hire a car, you can hire a van, you can hire a mechanical digger if you want. Or once upon a time you can hire a traction engine if that's what you needed as a builder or a construction company or whatever. And had a variety of different owners. At one point it was converted to a road roller, so it was on rolling duties as well. And current owners purchased 6 years ago, carried out a major boiler overhaul and a rebuild. Now owned by Pete Taylor from Bathingbourne here on the Isle of Wight. 1923 Tasker B2 Little Giant. Work building it started 3 years ago from casting, supplied by an engineering company, and with a half-size scale model, everything scaled down, with the exception of the driving position. There it goes in front of the commentary position, just about to come up to the top side of the arena. Finished earlier this year, half-size scale model for the Tasker B2 chain drive traction owned by Stuart Wells from Sandown. From builders of hybrids in Somerset. So strictly, it's a Taylor and Shuttleworth steamroller, but actually was finished by Babcock and Wilcox. Pretty much the way it was. And the 12 rollers were duly delivered by rail, as it happens to hybrid. And this particular roller was used for a variety of road-making duties around Somerset and nearby counties, and actually rolled the approach road to Hinkley Point Power Station. One of 3 surviving of the 10-ton rollers that were built. Date from 1926, now owned by Alan Sloper from Newport here on the island. Here it comes, just coming up to the top side of the arena. An Isle of Wight engine coming on the lower side of the arena. Why do I say it's an Isle of Wight engine? Well, it was originally supplied new in 1909 to a farm on the outskirts of Ryde here on 09. As I said, it was originally supplied new to Barnsley Farm in Ryde here on the island, where it remained all of its working life. And now in the ownership of the Dane collection from Ryder on the island. It was only back in steam last year. It was out of steam for a good period of time, about 20 years or so. Huge amount of restoration work has been undertaken on it. Still work to go, which is why it has no boiler cladding at the moment and hasn't had a good repaint done yet. But it's back in full working order. All properly repaired, refurbished, renewed, all boiler tested and properly checked out. Just needs all the finishing touches, all the cladding and a jolly good repaint. It's an engineering project for people who are into engineering and steam engineering. Just got their little workshop who just like to tinker. Tell you what though, it's a lot more than just tinkering to build one of these, because again, they are live steam. There is a coal fire in there burning very, very brightly at the moment, just using much smaller lumps of coal. The boiler is working at full boiler pressure, probably around 150, 160 pounds per square inch. And everything has been tested, fully checked and approved and insured before they can go out in steam. It has a natural interest in steam. You sometimes see them driving the steam locomotives on the line here. But behind the scenes he's been busy building it. Beautiful condition, finished earlier this year. A third size scale model of a Foster agricultural engine, and once again everything scaled down exactly with the exception of the driving division. And there's Chris at the controls just as it goes down to the top side of the arena. Engine, everything scaled right down, but once again exhibiting the power of steam. Got the driver up there, pulling a trailer, young lad on the back, making very light work. And although these are tiny little engines, they are very high powered and can, on the flat, actually haul probably 3 or 4 tonne on a trailer. It's not always recognised just how powerful steam power can be. Either side of the boiler barrel for extended road runs, means it's got enough water for longer running. And from time to time, for something different, for those having anniversary parties or weddings, it has actually been used as a wedding car. Well, I presume the trailer on the back would be the wedding car. 2015, that was completed, owned by Dave Mallinger. 1975, so I think this deserves an extra long whistle up from all of the steam vehicles in the arena. Come on in guys, girls, let's hear you whistle up to celebrate the 50th anniversary show. Let's hear you. How do you finish? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, give them all a big round of applause. Absolutely terrific. Thank you very much. And the vehicles are now going to remain parked up in the arena.